Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online VGC 15 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. We're just going to jump into today's episode, currently sitting with a rating of 1842. Yesterday's episode, we did split it 1-1 after winning the first two games and in the first two episodes. So, we're 5-1 with the team so far. Tomorrow will be our very last day with this team before we move on to a brand new team on Road to Ranked, but we'll see how far we can climb up in these last 4 games. As always, if you enjoy Road to Ranked, please share your support by leaving a like in the video. I'd really appreciate it. In addition, I'll be working on a team analysis on this team to reveal the EV spreads real soon and tell you guys how I came up about building it for nationals. Of course it's just an edited team, but I still think the team building process is pretty important, so I want to show you guys what I was considering going into the biggest tournament of the year before Worlds, of course. So look forward to that. It should be pretty exciting. And yeah, it's been a really fun run with this team. I'm glad I got to feature at least a couple of games with it. I'm also going to be doing some post commentary or post-game analysis on the stream games that I was at US Nationals. So if you didn't catch into the stream, I played Chua once, Angel Miranda twice, and eventual national champion Toller Webb. So I'm gonna be doing some analysis on all those games, telling you guys what was going on during in my mind during those matches, and I think that will be pretty cool. So stay tuned for that as well, as we're just gonna look for our first opponent of today's episode. Gonna find Enigma from Portugal with a rating of 1449. Wow. So, Enigma here actually has Paul Chua's rain team, which I find absolutely hilarious. Despite his low rating, definitely a really strong team here, so this is going to be a tough one. I actually played this team 5 times last weekend, since, it's the same 6 Pokemon that Paul had, rocking Politoed, Ludicolo, Terrakion, Thundurus, Salamence, and Aegislash. So, I find it really funny that my opponent, brings Paul Chua's rain team right after I mentioned it. Of course, Paul finished 10th at US Nationals with this team. We played in the first day in the Swiss rounds and then the second day during the Swiss rounds as well. And against Paul, really, I like leading with Salamence a lot. I think Salamence puts on a lot of pressure immediately, especially if he brings Politoed, Ludicolo, or Terrakion, or even his own Salamence. So I do like Salamence here, and typically I like to go with Rotom, but Aegislash also is pretty solid here. So I'm going to go Salamence, Aegislash, Tyranitar, Rotom, which is really what I went for in the earlier matches against Paul, though later on towards the end I ended up bringing the Landorus, which is definitely worth considering as well. I actually like Landorus a bit more here just for the Terrakion, Aegislash, Thundurus, Salamence matchup, though, I don't know, my opponent's not Paul here, so it's a bit difficult because against Paul, at this point I probably bring Landorus since he leans away towards bringing the Rain Pokemon. Landorus also gives me a better matchup against the Aegislash and the Thundurus, but then Rotom allows me to switch into Thunder Wave, so I guess Landorus allows me to do that as well. So it's really between the two. I'm not sure what my opponent's going to end up bringing, but I'll play it safer here and bring Rotom. I didn't really bring Landorus against Paul until like game 3, yeah, in our second best of 3 set, I believe. Just because I figured he would go with Pokemon like Salamence, Thundurus, Aegislash, and Terrakion, and I didn't think he'd go with Rain, and it ended up paying off. Unfortunately, those games aren't recorded, so I can't really get them online, but I can recap how my set against him went. Of course, it's also really interesting when you play the same opponent multiple times. It's hilarious because I played Toller Webb twice, Paul Chua twice, and Angel Miranda twice. So the Nationals format is pretty interesting because you play multiple sets, often against the same people if you make it far enough. But we're going to finally get into the first game of today's episode against Enigma, rocking Paul Chua's rain team. Let's see what my opponent decides to lead with. Salamence, Aegislash here, really safe lead for me, unless Thundurus, Aegislash, probably the most problematic lead that my opponent can bring. But, I get a nice Intimidate off immediately. My Aegislash puts on a lot of pressure. My opponent's actually going to lead with Salamence and Thundurus, which is not too bad here. My Intimidate goes first, so I'm not sure if he's max speed or not, but regardless, Aegislash is in a pretty ideal position here just because of the fact that he doesn't have a really great way to hit it, unless his Salamence has a fire type attack, but I wouldn't anticipate it having it. Now my opponent might be inclined to Thunder Wave or Hidden Power Ice, so I could switch out into Rotom and Shadow Ball Thundurus. Or I could switch into Tyranitar, take the Thunder Wave, just because Tyranitar puts on a lot of offensive pressure the following turns. Which one would I rather do? You know what? I want to get a bit more offensive pressure off here with Tyranitar, so I'm going to switch into Tyranitar. I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball into Thundurus. That way I get a lot of free damage off, put it in Rock Slide KO range, and if, my opponent here, Tyranitar, can take the special type attacks easily from either of my opponent's Pokemon. So we'll see if he switches out Salamence, because that is a move that I would predict. Otherwise, he's probably going to Mega Evolve and Protect. Looks like we are going to see the Mega Evolution, so I didn't want to risk any speed ties first of all. I know that Salamence is pretty important to deal with the Politoed and the Ludicolo on my opponent's side. So looks like he is just going to go for the Thunder Wave here immediately, smartly onto the Tyranitar slot, not going for the Hidden Power Ice instead. So could have gotten a Draco Meteor off immediately, but I didn't really want to risk it. We're actually going to see a Double Edge come out of that Salamence, so physical Salamence, but against a Tyranitar, it's not going to do too much damage, as he's going to take some recoil damage, and Aegislash here is going to be able to get a Shadow Ball off for relatively free. So this is a really good start to the game. You know, I get a lot of free damage off. Thundurus is definitely one of the more difficult Pokemon for this team to deal with, so this way I can switch Aegislash out into my Rotom Wash in the back to take a potential Thunder Wave and just knock it out with the Rock Slide this following turn. So I'm pretty pleased with the game so far. That first turn basically was as ideal as possible. Aegislash didn't get paralyzed, it didn't get Swagger, no shenanigans there. So this next turn I'm just going to Rock Slide and switch Aegislash out into Rotom. It's also interesting to note that Salamence went for the Double Edge onto my Salamence slot, probably assuming there then he doesn't have a Dragon type attack, so maybe something like Dragon Dance, Earthquake, Double Edge Protect. You know, that's the kind of popular physical Dragon, or Mega Salamence set that we saw earlier on in the season. He's going to make a good switch here, actually switching the Salamence out, presumably into Politoed, but it's actually going to be a Ludicolo. Fine by me here because I get free damage off against it. Ludicolo, of course, often likes to carry the Assault Vest item, so it can't take physical type attacks too well. So I'm going to be able to most likely knock out Thundurus here, and he's going to go for the Thunder Wave onto the Rotom slot. Tyranitar fortunately gets the Rock Slide off. Going to be able to connect with both of my opponent's Pokemon, knocking out that Thundurus and doing just under 50% to Ludicolo. So you know, first two turns of this game have been quite ideal for me here. But we're going to definitely see Politoed switch in here, so, you know, ultimately not bringing Landorus was probably the right call. I definitely like Rotom here a bit more for the Thunder Wave immunity, which really helps out. But I definitely expect to see Politoed coming in here. If my opponent doesn't have Politoed, then he's going to be in a lot of trouble just because my Salamence easily deals with Ludicolo outside of rain. And wow, he didn't bring Politoed, revealing Aegislash instead, which I'm more than happy to see. Knocking out the Aegislash still is going to be a bit difficult, but we should be alright here. I'm actually just going to Rock Slide and Protect with my Rotom. I want to see what he goes for here, whether he has Substitute with Aegislash or not, whether he tries to Wide Guard me. If anything, I actually want him to knock out my Tyranitar so I get a free switch into Salamence, because Ludicolo is a Pokemon that doesn't carry Protect, so I can just Double Edge into that spot, you know, relatively free. This game is still definitely far from over, despite me taking an early lead, knocking out the Thundurus and doing around 50 to Ludicolo. Aegislash here, definitely a really difficult Pokemon to deal with, especially without my Landorus team. He smartly targets my Tyranitar here with a Scald, and let's see who Aegislash targets. Double up into Tyranitar here would be a very good play on my opponent's end. Looks like we actually are going to see the double up onto the Tyranitar, so very nicely done on my opponent's end, but I don't mind that one bit because it does mean this free switch into the Salamence, which I have in the back. So I'm going to be able to Double Edge the Ludicolo slot for free. He actually has Life Orb Aegislash, which is also pretty good to confirm. Just because I don't mind playing against Life Orb Aegislash here because he's going to be doing a lot of damage to himself each turn. Both Rotom Wash and Aegislash now deal with my opponent's Salamence in the back pretty well, so I feel pretty good about my position at this point. Now, I don't want to risk the Wide Guard, so I'm just going to Double Edge into the Salamence slot. Not the Salamence. I'm going to use Salamence and Double Edge into the Ludicolo slot. I'm going to predict the King Shield on the Aegislash and go for the Will-O-Wisp. Even if he doesn't King Shield, with the burn and the Life Orb damage, he's going to be taking so much damage every turn, and Salamence should be able to survive a Life Orb. He's actually going to make a good play here with drawing the Ludicolo into Salamence, so, you know, could have potentially predicted that by going for a Draco Meteor, but at this point I just wanted the free damage. Without the Intimidate, I'm going to be able to, you know, do even more damage, plus the Sand, so I don't mind that play, but nicely done on my opponent's end, knowing like he doesn't have a great way to hit the Rotom Wash here. We do see the Aegislash go for the Stance Chain, so I get 12.5% of damage off as long as Will-O-Wisp connects here. So that's really good. So this game is slowly pulling away in my favor, but the Salamence mirror match is always a bit annoying to deal with. I'm wondering how fast the Salamence here is, because he is going to be able to hang on from that Double Edge with enough to survive Sandstorm. Will-O-Wisp also fortunately connects with the Aegislash, which I think is really important here. And so we've seen King Shield, we've seen Flash Cannon, presumably Shadow Ball, and you would assume Wide Guard as the last one, given that, Life Orb Aegislashes don't use Substitute as often, but Substitute definitely possible. At this point, though, I'm very glad that I got that burn off, just because it adds so much more damage each turn. So let's see, given who I have in the back, I think this next turn I'm actually just going to go straight for the Double Protect. I want that Aegislash to get into Blade form. That way, you know, he's more inclined to not go for 2 attacks the next turn and instead go for a King Shield. So we'll see what he goes for here. It looks like Salamence isn't going to be protecting. I guess he could actually go for a Dragon Dance, which would be really clutch, but that's not going to be the case. Aegislash just chooses to attack once again, so you can see here how I'm baiting my opponent into these attacks. He's going to go for the Shadow Ball onto the Salamence slot as well. Sandstorm unfortunately going down, but that's actually better for me since both of my Pokemon right now are affected by it. So let's think. Knowing that my opponent has Ludicolo in the back, actually I think this next turn I'm just going to go for the Hyper Voice and the Thunderbolt. And the reason why I'm going for the Hyper Voice here is I think it's highly unlikely that the Aegislash King shields. If Salamence wins the speed tie and goes for a double edge onto Salamence, then he'll knock himself out from recoil. So there's not much I can really lose here. If Aegislash goes for the wide guard, then Thunderbolt plus Burn actually should just knock it out, in which my Aegislash in the back can seal up the game. He's actually going to double edge my Salamence as I hang on with 1 HP. That was really clutch. Obviously he won the speed tie there, which was a bit unfortunate. But I managed to hang on with just a bit of HP, or literally just 1 HP. Thunderbolt there should have been able to knock out the Aegislash regardless, especially seeing how much Hyper Voice did. So I think I had that game locked up just because, you know, I would have been able to knock out Aegislash. Even if I lost Salamence, it would have been Rotom Wash and my Mega Salamence, excuse me, my Aegislash against his Ludicolo. And Ludicolo can't really do too much to Aegislash, you know, Thunderbolt plus Shadow Ball is a KO. Shadow Ball at this point should actually be a KO also. So, obviously I got a bit lucky there with the 1 HP survival, but if I won the speed tie, that wouldn't have even mattered. But I knew that at the end game there was little I could really lose. We would definitely be trading knockouts, and he had to play a bit more aggressively, so that's why I went for the Hyper Voice play. Fortunately, it ended up working out. I don't think there was, you know, much that I could have lost after getting that free damage onto Aegislash with the Will-O-Wisp. Now, just gonna Hyper Voice Thunderbolt, and that's gonna be game. So Ludicolo is gonna go down, and we're gonna be able to pick up a win in the first game of today's episode. You know, despite my opponent having much lower rating than the ratings we normally see once we're this high in the ladder, he still had a really solid team. Obviously, Rock and Paul Chua was a rain team, and he played very well as well. So, you know, it was a great game, and I'm glad I got to feature one even despite the lower rating. So, let's see if we can get matched up with, you know, maybe a higher rated opponent this next game to get our rating a bit higher, since I would like to try to get to the 1900 sooner, hopefully by next week. So we do have 3 games left with this team, but that was really exciting, and it was fun to face against a team that I, you know, played against multiple times last weekend at Nationals. Really interesting match there too, since my opponent didn't bring Politoed, which I actually think was the right call. If my opponent had Politoed, I definitely felt like that match would have been easily able to win, because I could have easily won that one, because I would have been able to just withdraw Tyranitar out into the Aegislash that I had in the back, then switch Tyranitar in the following turn, and once, you know, rain goes down on that side, it really can't do very much. Though it's funny to note, because Paul Chua's Politoed did actually carry Rain Dance, which he used against me actually at one point in Game 3 of our Day 1 Switch match. So the Rain Dance is actually a really clutch move and can swing a lot of momentum into your favor, especially against this kind of team where Ludicolo basically beats 5 of my 6 Pokemon if the rain is up. So, you know, I don't know if you guys have seen that stream match against Paul or not, but it's pretty funny reliving that. We're just going to look for our second opponent of the day here. Looks like a pretty slow day in the matchmaking system, but we're going to find Signum with a rating of 1793. I believe this is actually the exact same opponent from yesterday, so this should be really, really interesting. Signum here has, not yesterday, 2 days ago, I believe. So we do see the Smeargle once again, but Kangaskhan, Raichu, Talonflame, Smeargle, Amoonguss, and Jellicent looks like the new member here, as opposed to the Azumarill that we saw a while back. So, the other day, the Smeargle revealed that it wasn't Choice Scarfed, but rather had Tailwind. So I could use that to my advantage. And I think I'm actually going to lead with the exact same leads of Salamence and Tyranitar, which I really liked last time. Definitely want Amoonguss in the back here, and I think Rotom Wash works perfectly fine as my last one. Though actually, Aegislash I like a bit more here. And the reason why I want Aegislash here is because Shadow Ball is a one-hit KO onto the Jellicent, whereas Jellicent here might be bulky enough to take a Thunderbolt from my not very offensive Rotom Wash. So I'm going to bring Aegislash here. You know, Kangaskhan can't really touch Aegislash, which is also nice because a team like this relies on getting power-up punches off and then double-edging stuff or returning stuff. Now, Talonflame here obviously can be a bit annoying to deal with, but I've got Tyranitar and Salamence, both which threaten Talonflame immensely, and Talonflame never really wants to Flare Blitz at the Aegislash, which actually brings me back to VGC 2014 when Sejum Park and a bunch of other players started using Mixed Talonflame with Brave Bird and Overheat, so you wouldn't have to attack into King's Shield. But regardless, I think Aegislash is a better call here in general. He doesn't take as much damage. And, you know, my opponent has three main Pokemon, I guess, with offense, and that's Kangaskhan, Talonflame, and Jellicent. Mungus and Smeargle really don't do very much, and Raichu can maybe get a Thunderbolt or a Hidden Power Ice off, but against Aegislash, you know, that's not doing too much damage. So, ultimately, you know, Rotom can't take Kangaskhan's attacks too well, especially after it gets a power-up punch, whereas Aegislash kind of walls the main attacker on his team. So that's why I feel a bit better bringing Aegislash here, and especially for that Jellicent, which we did not see last time. The nice thing about Aegislash is it can also stall out those sleep turns pretty easily if Smeargle somehow gets a Dark Void up. So this should be a really interesting match, especially if my opponent decides to bring the same Smeargle Kangaskhan lead as he did last time. Looks like we're actually going to see something completely different though with the Amoonguss and Jellicent. So a really Trick Room lead here, which is pretty interesting to me. And already there's some mind games because I can immediately go for the Hyper Voice and the Assurance onto the Jellicent slot, but if Jellicent has Protect, my opponent can just go for a Protect. So another play I can make here is just Hyper Voicing and Rock Sliding, but then Amoonguss might Protect here, so very interesting start. I think I'm definitely Hyper Voicing here. The question is, do I want to Rock Slide or do I want to Assurance? If I were my opponent, I'd Protect with the Amoonguss and try to attack with Jellicent, so I'm just going to Hyper Voice Assurance Jellicent. Worst case, Amoonguss takes, actually the worst case here is Jellicent protects, he gets a Spore off against Salamence, so that would be slightly problematic. But I really want to deny the Trick Room if possible, so I'm kind of really playing risky this first turn, but I don't mind that too much. I guess another play I could have made was just double edging Amoonguss and Assurancing, but I didn't really want to do that. So the question here is, who's going to Protect? Jellicent's a Pokemon that often actually doesn't even carry Protect. You know, Angel Miranda used Jellicent to get top 8 at Nationals and he didn't have Protect. And Amoonguss is actually going to go for the Rage Powder, so Hyper Voice Rock Slide actually would have just been a better play, but I was predicting the Protect there, unfortunately. And also actually making me look slightly silly here because Assurance doesn't go, well, in this case because I just Mega Evolved, Assurance is going to go before my Hyper Voice, so he actually disables my my Hyper Voice with Cursed Body and manages to get up Trick Room. So Rock Slide would have been slightly better there, but I was really hoping that he would just Protect with the Amoonguss and try to Trick Room, but you know, I'm not fine with that. I knocked out Amoonguss, which is great, and I still have Pokemon in the back that can easily, you know, win me this match. So not a terrible start to the game, though Rock Slide Hyper Voice probably would have been a slightly better play. So we're going to see Kangaskhan come in for my opponent now, which I'm more than okay with. You know, Amoonguss and Aegislash in the back here, definitely got to feel pretty good with both of those Pokemon. So I think I'm going to play it safe here. I'm just going to Protect with Salamence and switch out into Amoonguss. Reason being that Jellicent most likely doesn't have a way to hit Salamence once I Rage Powder, so, you know, getting in the Amoonguss for free here would be really great. If my opponent's smart, he might predict the Amoonguss to switch in and go for like a Will-O-Wisp double edge, but the main thing he can't knock out Amoonguss, I guess, unless he goes for an Ice Beam double edge into a Tyranitar slot, which would be a fantastic play on his end. But there's no need to play so aggressive, and regardless if my opponent's Kangaskhan targets that Amoonguss slot, he's going to take enough Rocky Helmet damage and recoil damage that my Aegislash can lock up the game. Or not lock up the game, but lock up the KO against Kangaskhan. But this time, I'm just going to play as safe as possible. I don't want to just eat an Ice Beam up with that Salamence because the late game can be really good. He does actually just Ice Beam here, and he does go for the power-up punch into the Amoonguss, so that's basically exactly what I wanted to see, because he's going to be taking all that recoil damage. Another fun thing to note here is actually that Amoonguss is going to be slower, so I can actually just Spore the Kangaskhan, which is kind of nice. And that's one of the benefits of running such a slow Amoonguss. This Amoonguss is basically mid-speed, which is incredibly helpful here. So we've seen the Trick Room and we've seen the Ice Beam, presumably a Water type attack, maybe Recover, maybe Protect, maybe Will-O-Wisp. But I'm just going to switch Salamence out into my Aegislash here and just go for the Spore onto Kangaskhan. There's really very little I can lose here, unless Kangaskhan, I guess, reveals Protect and Jellicent reveals Taunt. But yeah, you can see how much Rocky Helmet Amoonguss is, how helpful it is and how essential it is onto this team. You know, being able to switch into Kangaskhan and allowing it to take that much damage immediately is really helpful, especially when this team doesn't rely on getting one-hit KOs, but really relies on you taking some residual damage here and there and then picking up knockouts with Double Edge, even stuff like Rock Slide and Life Orb Aegislash boosted attacks. And yep, he's not gonna reveal anything crazy, so no Protect from Kangaskhan, no Taunt from Jellicent, so I'm gonna be able to put that Kangaskhan to sleep immediately, which is very nice. And he's just gonna go for an Ice Beam here with Jellicent onto the Aegislash slot. So as long as he doesn't freeze me here, I should be good. And he does not get the freeze, which is fantastic. So all I have to do this next turn is go for the Rage Powder and the Flash Cannon, and Kangaskhan's gonna go down. Alternatively, I could actually just Rage Powder Shadow Ball. I actually like that play a bit more. just because of the fact that he's not going to be able to knock out my Amoonguss with Ice Beam, so if that Kangaskhan does manage to get a one-turn Wake Up, he's going to have to double edge the Amoonguss slot. So Rocky Helmet plus double edge recoil damage plus sand damage is going to do so much to the Kangaskhan in itself. And I'm going for the Rage Powder in the off chance that he manages to try to go for a Sucker Punch. Looks like he actually did go for the Sucker Punch, which is fantastic for me here. So he's going to go for an Ice Beam. He didn't Wake Up actually, so it would have been fine if I just Sport or Giga Drain the Jellicent slot. But regardless, I'm going to be able to Shadow Ball the Jellicent here for a knockout, getting rid of a very big threat to my Salamence in the back. So definitely got to feel pretty good about my position at this point in the game. Jellicent goes down. So I did remove the Jellicent and the Amoonguss, and I believe there's one more turn of Trick Room left, so Aegislash will be able to outspeed my opponent's Kangaskhan next turn. Amoonguss here should be able to get a Spore off regardless of what comes in, which is also fantastic. You see Kangaskhan here already falling under 50%, and it hasn't done anything other than get a power-up punch. So the Sandstorm damage is really picking up. It's going to help and go a long way. So he's going to bring in Raichu as his last Pokemon, which is perfectly fine by me. The safest play here would actually be to King Shield with Aegislash and to withdraw the Amoonguss. Though I guess you'd probably want to Sucker Punch Aegislash right now. Yeah. I don't want to risk him waking up. So I'm just actually going to play as safe as possible. I'm just going to King Shield here. And I mean, there's no way he Power Up Punches the Amoonguss slot. Actually, yeah, I'm just going to go for the Spore onto the Raichu. The reason why I don't want to switch into Tyranitar is I don't want him to potentially predict me and get a power-up punch off, because that could actually really screw me up. So, I'm just going to play as safe as possible here. Presumably, he's going to Fake Out Sucker Punch here. That's the play I would make here. He does go for the Fake Out smartly onto the Amoonguss slot. Doesn't really do any damage. He takes more damage really from that Rocky Helmet. His Kangaskhan actually takes a third turn of sleep, though you would think it was going for the Sucker Punch there. Amoonguss flinches, but Sandstorm goes down here. And Trick Room expires. So it is 4-2, but Kangaskhan obviously having that much health is it fun to deal with. Now he does have Hidden Power Ice with Kangaskhan. Not with Kangaskhan, with the Raichu, excuse me, it's late here. So here you probably want to Hidden Power Ice and just Sucker Punch. So what I can do, actually, yeah, this should win me the game. So I'm just going to Rage Powder Flash Cannon here. Because Kangaskhan cannot touch Aegislash, he's got to go for a unless he has Crunch, I guess. But then he'd have to HP Ice knock out Amoonguss and then Crunch to knock out Aegislash. Kangaskhan manages to wake up. Yep, he's going to go for the Sucker Punch, but Rage Powder is going to be able to redirect that. So I'm just playing as safe as possible. Raichu's going to go for the Hidden Power Ice onto Amoonguss. That's going to knock me out, but I'm going to be able to knock out the Kangaskhan here, and then Tyranitar wins me the game. So despite a somewhat scary start, knocking out the Amoonguss on my opponent's side was really big, and then my opponent had no answer to Amoonguss or Aegislash on my side. And that's why I didn't mind facing against Trick Room very much with this team, because I had my own Amoonguss to counter Trick Room, and being, the slowest Pokemon, aka the fastest Pokemon on the Trick Room, is incredibly helpful. And he had no answer to it, and Amoonguss being as good of a Kangaskhan counter as it is, really helped me out there, especially getting that Spore off and just getting all that Rocky Helmet damage off. So, I'm going to bring in Tyranitar, and at this point, it's going to be a good game. He's not going to be able to do anything with the Raichu. So, just going to, go for the Assurance and the Shadow Ball. At this point, I mean, if you wanted the 100% safe play, you should King Shield with Aegislash, but I don't think Thunderbolt will even knock out the Aegislash. And he actually going to Thunderbolt the Tyranitar, probably going for a Paralysis there, but not going to be able to get it, and Shadow Ball is going to be able to come out. In one of those cases, don't let any potential RNG get to you. Just go for the double target there, because if he Thunderbolts your Aegislash, then Tyranitar guarantees knockouts the Raichu the following turn. So I'm going to be able to win this rematch against Signum. Unfortunately, we did not see Smeargle make an appearance, but a fun game there. Jellicent setting up a Trick Room, but not be able to do much more other than that. Fortunately, Amoonguss and Aegislash really dictated the course of that match. That was a pretty fun rematch. It's always great when you don't have to deal with a Smeargle, though. It would have been really interesting, because if he did bring Smeargle, I would have known that he was not Choice Scarfed as he revealed in our last battle. But best of 3 is really fun, even though he changed his team up a bit. I would definitely enjoy that one. And I do love playing best of 3 a lot with this team, so it was a fun match. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. 2 fun games for you guys today. Leave a like always if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Alright, peace.